Hello and welcome to my watch list for the upcoming FPL season. If you want to skip to a certain position, timestamps are in the description. Furthermore, I have made a few adjustments in terms of fixture difficulty, which for some reason not a lot of people do. So, for example, Liverpool, if you're playing a defender against them, is a different color than if you're playing an attacker against Liverpool, which is pretty self-explanatory because I presume Liverpool will be stronger in attack than they are in defense. So, let's start off with the goalkeepers. First up, Ederson, great fixtures, however, he doesn't make saves and he doesn't get bonus points. So he's a decent option, but I wouldn't go there. Allison, unlike Ederson, makes a lot of saves, but the fixtures are rough in the first 8. Pope, also, the fixtures are awful, especially the first 4, so I wouldn't go there. In the 5 million bracket, we have Onana, who is the first good option on the watch list. The fixtures are good, he's 100% nailed, unlike a lot of other goalkeepers this season, which is a rare occurrence in FPL. But yeah, Onana, great option. Martinez next up, we know he can make saves, he can rack up the bonus points, and has some decent fixtures. I just slightly prefer Onana, therefore he is still a good option, but not as good as Onana. Kepa is also a player who is interesting. I expect Chelsea to improve this season. They can't be any worse than they were last season. So Kepa, with some great fixtures in the first 8, is a good option. However, Chelsea have signed Sanchez from Brighton, so there's always this lingering doubt when there is a decent number 2 goalkeeper. And I don't think Sanchez is great by any means, but they signed him for a reason. So if Kepa makes a few mistakes in the first few fixtures, he can definitely find himself on the bench. And for 5 million, that's not what you want. Next up, Ramsdale, also a goalkeeper with some competition. David Raya has just signed for Arsenal. And yeah, otherwise Ramsdale would be a great option. The fixtures are good. However, the same argument as I made with Kepa, if he makes a few mistakes, he can find himself on the bench quite quickly. Vicario is the new goalkeeper for Spurs, and to be honest, I don't expect Spurs to be good defensively, so I just wouldn't go there. Sa and Raya, Sa is incredibly overpriced this season, and Raya has just joined, so I expect Ramsdale to start the season, of course, and therefore Raya is not a valid option. And in the 4.5 million bracket, now this is where things get interesting. Flecken, in my opinion, is a great goalkeeper. I know his preseason isn't exactly going to plan. However, I doubt Strakosha is going to threaten his place anytime soon. Brentford, great team, especially from a defensive point of view. They restrict their opponents to a lot of low XG shots, therefore their goalkeepers make a lot of saves. And I think Flecken is a great option. Next up, Pickford, who I also think is a great option. I know what you're going to say, it's Jordan Pickford, but it's Everton, yeah, but a Sean Dyche team historically is good for only 2 positions, and that is center back or defender and goalkeepers. So I expect Pickford to rack up saves, get bonus points, and especially with those incredible fixtures in the first 8. I mean, Fulham at home, Wolves at home, Sheffield away, Luton at home, and Bournemouth at home. It doesn't get any better than that. So I think one of those 2 will be my starting goalkeeper for game week 1. Next up, Johnston, who I also think is a great option. There is some competition from Guaita, but I believe Johnston is 90% going to start the season, so I would have no fears if I went with him. Also a decent defensive team, you can see a pattern emerging here. A goalkeeper who will make saves, who will get bonus points when they do win 1-0, 2-0, and he racks up the saves. that's really what you want, because in one performance he can get the points that Ederson gets in two clean sheet performances. So that's why I really prefer these cheap goalkeepers who don't play for the best teams. Next up, Steele, also some competition from Verbruggen, but I think he will start the season. However, after the first three fixtures, there's a fixture turn with Newcastle, Man United. Okay, then Bournemouth is a great fixture, obviously, but Villa and Liverpool. So I personally wouldn't go for a Brighton goalkeeper. And the rest, Leno, Muric, Fabianski, Foderingham, Neto, and Kaminski either have awful fixtures or have competition from the number two at the club, or just play for teams that I expect to get battered this season. And then we go on to the 4.0 million bracket, which is also an interesting one because Turner has signed for Nottingham Forest. And if you look at the fixtures, you can see in game week 2, Turner plays Sheffield United at home, and in game week 5, he plays Burnley at home. The only two fixtures where realistically you want to play Turner in this first 8 games fixture run. And coincidentally, we have Pickford, who in game week 2 plays against Aston Villa away, and in game week 6 plays against Brentford away. So two awful fixtures, and the rotation with Turner and Pickford costs only 8.5 million, which is why I am going to 90%. I'm 90% sure I am going to go with this combination. Definitely a great option, and even if you don't have Pickford, I think Turner is a good option at 4.0 million, the cheapest the goalkeeper can be, and he is going to be starting at least for the foreseeable future, until there are some rumors that they are going to sign Dean Henderson, but he's currently injured, so I wouldn't worry too much about him. Turner is, in my opinion, nailed and a great option at that price point. Then we have Areola. There is a lot of talk about him. He has high ownership on the game. And I personally am not quite sure about him, because if you get him in and first game Fabianski starts, which I expect to happen, I think Fabianski is still the number one goalkeeper at West Ham, his price is going to drop and you will be left with 0.1 million less than you started with. And that can be key, especially in the first few weeks where prices are changing all the time and they're changing quite dramatically. So Areola, yes, I can see the merit with going for him. There is a chance he's the new number one this season, but I wouldn't go there. Moving on to the defenders. First up we have Chilwell and James. So if you expect Chelsea to improve this season after game week 1 and the Liverpool fixture, they have an incredible run of fixtures. Chilwell is the safer option, let's say, not as injury prone as Reece James. However, Reece James is, in my opinion, the more explosive option. So yeah, decent options there. Next up, Luke Shaw. Also a good option on some set pieces, good for bonus points as well. Will play most, if not all, the games for Manchester United. Also a great fixture run in the first 8 game weeks. Next up, Diaz and Stones. Now, if it weren't Pep, they would be absolutely incredible options and probably at the top of this list, even better than Shaw, Chilwell and James. However, from game week 4 onwards, there's Champions League football, I believe. So with Gvardiol as well coming in, who is not yet on the watch list because I think he will need some time to adapt to Pep's system, Diaz and Stones might get rotated. But for now, I think both are good options. It really is a lottery which one to pick. Stones perhaps is the more injury prone one, a bit riskier than Diaz in my opinion, might get subbed off early in a few games. However, that could also work in your favor if you get Stones and he gets subbed off at around the 60th minute. and they concede in the 70th or 80th minute, he gets to keep his clean sheet points. So that's a double-edged sword. Could be a plus and could be a negative as well, seeing as he will perhaps be rotated more than Diaz. However, both great options. City, the best defensive team in the league, or rather, the team with the best defensive odds. So yeah, good options, both of them. Next up, Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now he is a bit low on this watch list, even though he has a new role in this Liverpool system, and I expect him to get loads of assists and goals this season, as he has done in the previous seasons. However, Liverpool's defense doesn't fill me with confidence, and the fixtures aren't great either. He is still a good option since we all know what he can do. For example, game week 2, of course, the Bournemouth fixture, he could get a goal, assist, maybe even both, and a clean sheet, and that could be a massive haul. But for the price of 8 million, I'm not convinced. Next up, Ben White. Now, I would definitely not go for Ben White, since there are other Arsenal options that are cheaper. Therefore, Ben White is as low as he is on the watch list. Trippier had a great season last year, but with the fixtures, especially the first four, being as difficult as they are for Newcastle, I wouldn't go for him, especially at that price. Robertson and Van Dijk don't have the attacking threat that Trent does, and the fixtures from a defensive point of view for a Liverpool team, which I expect will concede a fair few goals this season, I would avoid them. In the 5 million bracket, at the top we have Gabriel and Saliba. Now, Arsenal are just a great team, and Gabriel may be a bit better than Saliba for attacking returns. He's an incredible threat from set pieces and one of the most nailed players in this Arsenal team. Of course, there is added competition this year with the arrival of Timber, but I wouldn't worry just yet, so both are good options. I'm leaning more towards Gabriel, but Saliba is also good. Next up, Estupinian. Now, what's really tempting about Estupinian is, of course, the first fixture. Against Luton, if he gets an attacking return and a clean sheet, that could be a massive haul. His price will rise, and if you don't have him, you will be regretting it. However, after game week 3, let's say, the fixtures get a bit rougher, and that's the only reason why he isn't higher on the watch list, but still a good option. At 5.0, we also have the Manchester United centre backs, Martinez and Varane. We've already talked about the great fixtures that Manchester United has in the first 8 game weeks, and these are absolutely nailed options, or at least should be. I mean, I doubt Lindelof will play until there is an injury. If I were picking between them, it's really close. Maybe I would go for Martinez just for that safety, since Varane is a bit injury prone, or really injury prone, unfortunately. But he does offer greater threat from set pieces, whereas Martinez doesn't really offer goal threat or assist threat. So it's close, but I'm leaning more towards Martinez. And to round off the 5 million bracket, we have Konate from Liverpool. It's a really good option for a Liverpool defender. I doubt Matip will play too much, at least early on. However, he is also injury prone, and as I've already spoken about, I don't expect Liverpool to keep a lot of clean sheets, so I would avoid Konate. At the 4.5 million bracket, we also have some great options, starting off with Rico Henry and Ethan Pinnock. Brentford, some decent fixtures, 4.5, a great price point. So you can't really go wrong. Both are nailed in this team. Pinnock offers perhaps more goal threat from set pieces, while Henry offers more assist threat from open play. So yeah, both are good options. Botman at 4.5 million, I thought this was a joke when I first saw the price revealed. I mean, I don't know. They probably just made a mistake with this one, since he is one of the most nailed players in that Newcastle backline. Doesn't offer as much goal threat and assist potential as Trippier and, for example, Fabian Schär, but he is 100% nailed. And even though the first four fixtures are awful, from then on it gets easier. However, there is an argument to not go with Botman, since if he is highly owned, which I believe he will be, and people started going to other defenders, he might see his price decrease. So, of course, I doubt you will be playing Botman in the first four games, so you can definitely go without him. However, at that price point, playing for one of the best defenses in the league, I think Botman is a steal. Next up, Colwill. I think he will start the season with Chelsea at centre back. There are some options. Badiashile, I think, is currently injured, so he's not a threat. Disasi could definitely come in, but he's perhaps more an option for the right side of the defense. And I think Colwill is a great option to start with. Next up, we have Tarkovsky, Cash, and Guehi. So all of these are pretty solid teams defensively, with some good games coming up in the first eight. And yeah, you can't really go wrong with them. However, I think there are better options. And to round off the 4.5 million bracket, we have Destiny Udogie. Spurs, as I've already spoken about, I have no faith in their defense. However, Udogie could be a threat from open play for assists and goals, since I do expect Spurs to score a lot of goals this season. Watch them a bit in preseason, and from an attacking point of view, they are definitely an intriguing team to go for. And at 4.5 million, an offensive fullback is a bargain. However, yeah, the first two fixtures, you probably don't want to play him in those, so you can wait and see, and perhaps for game week 3, switch out one of your defenders for him if Spurs look good and he is starting. And to round off the defender watch list, we have the 4.0 million bracket. Now, in first place is a bit of an interesting pick because we have Malo Gusto, who is of course not the starter for Chelsea, but Reece James, unfortunately, it's only a matter of time since he picks up an injury. Therefore, Gusto could definitely come in and at 4.0 million be an attacking fullback in a good team, especially with the fixtures from Game Week 3 onwards being as good as they are. You aren't really risking much with going for Malo Gusto from Game Week 1 and hoping for a Reece James injury so you can have a 4.0 million fullback, as I said already, with some attacking threat for a good team. Because the way I'm thinking is you can have him or the other 4.0 million assets like Baldock, Kabore, Bell, or Bayer. But you don't really want to play these players anyway. So, for example, if one of your defenders gets injured and you have Baldock on your bench, or you're probably just going to substitute out your injured defender for another one that is more expensive. So there's very little risk in going with Malo Gusto. And with Reece James's injury history, I think he is a very interesting pick. Next up, the playing 4.0 million asset from Sheffield United, which is Baldock. Has some decent fixtures in the first four, so I would definitely go for him rather than Kabore or Bell or Bayer, who, yeah, have some awful games, have a blank game week in game week 2, and at least Baldock offers some attacking threat in that Sheffield United team. Kabore and Bell, I would definitely rather go for Kabore because as far as I know Bell has incredibly high ownership, so It's only a matter of time till his price drops, because I don't expect Luton to keep any clean sheets in the first 6, 7, 8 game weeks. And Bayer, yeah, same argument as with Bell. I think he has decently high ownership and could see a price drop. And his fixtures are even worse than Bell's and Cabore's, although I expect Burnley to be a better defense than Luton. So yeah, that's it for the defenders. Moving on to the midfielders. Now this is where things get really spicy. I would definitely recommend going for 5 midfielders this season, or at least starting the season with a formation that has 5 playing midfielders. Starting off with Mo Salah, the Egyptian king, just a great option. Unfortunately, a bit pricey, but yeah, you know what you're going to get with Mo Salah. Probably another 200 plus points season. I expect Liverpool to be incredible in attack this season, even better than previously. And yeah, he's their main man, especially that game week 2 against Bournemouth. Could be a captain. The only reason why he isn't higher on the watch list is unfortunately because Haaland is almost a perma captain at this point, except for maybe that game week 2. So yeah, Salah, great option. Kevin De Bruyne at 10.5 million, a bit pricey, especially considering the pricing of other midfielders, which we will get to later. Also, the fact that he's just come off an injury and only played around 20 minutes against Arsenal, he could definitely be ready for game week 1, but I have my doubts. Therefore, he isn't as good as he should be, really, if he was fully fit with these fixtures on the horizon. If, however, we do get some team news about him starting against Burnley, I would definitely consider him. Yeah, the fixtures are great. He plays for Man City, the treble winners, so yeah, could be a great option. However, currently in my mind, he isn't. Moving on to the 7.5 to 9.0 million bracket. Now, this is the bracket you want to go for. I think you really have to go for at least 2, if not 3 or 4 of these midfielders, because even if it doesn't work out, you can always switch out to another one of these midfielders. For example, if you get Saka and you're tired of seeing him blank for the 3rd game week in a row, you can switch him to Bruno Fernandes or someone like Foden or Madison, etc. So yeah, let's start off the watch list, the 7.5 to 9.0 million bracket with Rashford and Saka. These are the best options in my opinion. Saka, I think, is the best option perhaps in the entire game, considering the team he plays for, his potential and his price. He's even cheaper than Rashford while arguably playing for a better team. So yeah, I would definitely go for Saka in my draft, and Rashford I think as well, because they both have pretty nice fixtures. They are both 100% nailed for their teams. They are the main goal scorers for their teams. So yeah, both are absolutely incredible options, and I would definitely implore you to consider one, if not both of them, for your starting draft. Moving on to Bruno Fernandes at 9.5 million. Again, a great option. If United score a lot of goals in these first 8 game weeks, chances are that Bruno and Rashford are going to be involved in the majority of them. Bruno is, of course, also on penalties. He has incredible vision, therefore he will get loads of assists if only his teammates finish his chances. But yeah, absolutely incredible option. The only reason why he isn't in the same bracket as Rashford and Saka is the fact that he might play a little bit deeper. Now, I believe that Mason Mount is going to be the one who will be playing deeper. However, if, for example, United have some problems playing out from the back, he will be the one to drop deeper, to distribute the ball, and to make sure that United are ticking. So yeah, Bruno is just a great option, but that's the only reason why he isn't in the same bracket as Saka and Rashford. If he's playing number 10, if he has no defensive work, he is maybe even better than Saka and Rashford, because we all know how much quality he has, and the fact that he is on penalties also adds to his appeal. Then we have the two Arsenal midfielders, Martinelli and Odegaard. I expect them both to start the first game of the season, of course. I expect Odegaard to maybe be the most nailed Arsenal midfielder throughout the season. He will get a lot of minutes. Saka, of course, as well. They are both guaranteed starters, while Martinelli has some competition from Leandro Trossard. However, I have no fears about either of them starting, but Odegaard is definitely going to get more minutes than Martinelli, and especially this season with the new World Cup extra time, that is perhaps going to be vital in our choice of fantasy assets. So yeah, if you want to go for someone a bit more nailed, you have Odegaard at 8.5. However, if you want to uh, be a bit more frugal with your budget, you have Martinelli at 8.0. So yeah, it's a 0.5 million saving, and there's no reason why Martinelli can't outscore Odegaard in the first 8 game weeks. So yeah, both are good options. Definitely consider them for your team. Next up, Foden and Grealish. Now, I put them in the same bracket purely because of the fact that we don't know that Foden will start game week 1 and that he will be a starting player at all for this new look Manchester City team without Mahrez and Gundogan. If we get some early team news and we see Foden starting, I think he is an incredible option. Maybe even better than Martinelli, Odegaard, and Bruno in the same bracket as Saka and Rashford, because he is just an electric player, and I personally really enjoy his play style and think he is quality. However, Grealish is the one who is more nailed than Foden, but on the other hand, Grealish doesn't offer the same attacking threat that Foden has. We've seen it last season. He even plays a role that is more about keeping the width and maybe slowing down the tempo, doing a lot of defensive work. So Grealish, even though I think he will be a starter and will perhaps play more minutes than Foden, he is not as appealing from a fantasy Premier League point of view. Next up, we have James Maddison. As I already talked about, I think Spurs are going to be really good in attack this season. However, the first 2 games are really rough. Brentford away, I don't see them scoring more than 1 goal there. And United at home, Spurs always struggle against United, so I don't see them scoring more than 1 or 2 goals against United. But from game week 3 onwards, I will definitely consider Madison for my team. Kai Havertz next up at 7.5 million. We've seen him play against Manchester City in the Community Shield, the false 9 role. I presume he will start against Forest as well and be a starter either at false 9 or in midfield. But he's disappointed us enough already, so I wouldn't go there. I just don't have the balls to do it, honestly. At 7.5, it's an interesting price point. He is going to be playing for one of the best teams in the league. The fixtures are there, but I just don't trust his finishing, and his assist potential isn't really high as well, so I wouldn't go there, but a decent option. Jota and Luis Diaz. Unfortunately, the fixtures are really rough for Liverpool, and there is a lot of options for Liverpool in the wing positions as well as the striker positions. Out of these two, I would definitely rather go for Luis Diaz. I think he is a bit more nailed than Jota. Jota might again play the super sub role. I expect the front 3 to be Diaz, Gakpo, and Salah. But I am not sure that the front 3 will be Diaz, Gakpo, and Salah. And I definitely don't want a player in game week 1 who ends up on the bench and sees his price decrease. But yeah, Diaz definitely a better option than Jota. He's even half a million cheaper for some reason than Jota. So yeah, okay option, but I wouldn't go there simply due to the rotation risk and the fact that Liverpool has so many options in midfield and attack. Heung-min Son has also seen his price decrease from a really disappointing season last year. However, as I said, same arguments with Madison from game week 3 onwards. If I see that Spurs are playing well in the first 2 game weeks, he could be a good option. Unfortunately, his price is a bit steep, therefore I prefer James Madison. In the 5.5 to 7.0 million bracket, we also have some great options. Starting off with the best of the bunch, in my opinion, it's Brian Mbomo. Now, at 6.5 million, you're getting a player that's the main man for a pretty great team in Brentford. The fixtures are also great. So, Spurs at home, first game, that could be a few goals for Brentford. Then it's Fulham, Palace, Bournemouth. Okay, Newcastle is difficult, but Everton and Forest. So, in the first 7 game weeks, you have some incredible fixtures for the main man now that Ivan Toney is suspended for Brentford. On penalties, really picked up last season with the suspension of Ivan Toney, started scoring loads, assisting. So, yeah, I definitely think he is the best option in this price bracket. Next up, we have Kaoru Mitoma at 6.5 million. The first 3 fixtures are great. He is, in my opinion, the most nailed midfielder for Brighton. So if you want to take advantage of the game against Luton and the first 3 fixtures that are quite easy, I would definitely go for him rather than Gross or Enciso or March or someone like that. However, after that, it gets a bit more difficult, and that's the only reason, honestly, why Mitoma isn't in the same bracket as Brian Mbomo. Next up is Eberechi Eze. Now, if the fixtures were kinder, I would maybe even put Eze ahead of Mbomo because he is a just a great player. Especially with a Roy Hodgson team, I think he can replicate what Wilfried Zaha used to do for Palace. I think he will be a one-man show. He will be on penalties. He will be on set pieces at least while Olise is injured. So Eberechi as absolutely a great pick, but the fixtures are a bit difficult. However, if you think that Palace can put a few past the likes of Brentford, Villa, and Arsenal, I would definitely go for him. I won't be starting with him, but when the fixtures get a little bit easier, I will definitely consider him, maybe from game week 3 onwards. That's also an option, perhaps to go with Kaoru Mitoma, and then from the 3rd game week onwards, switch to Eze. Diaby, so one of my favorites from Bundesliga Fantasy, an incredible player. There is, of course, the adaptation period. Let's call it that way, for a new league, a new team, and that's the only reason why I haven't put him in the same bracket as some of these other 6.5 million assets. Because if he will be playing up front for Aston Villa, who I think everybody expects to have a good season, with games like Everton, Burnley, Palace in the first 5, even the Liverpool fixture. If Villa are playing Liverpool away, they can make use of Diaby's space on the counter, and definitely he can get some returns there. So Diaby is definitely an option to consider. Leandro Trossard, now I'm not sure that he will start the Nottingham Forest game, unfortunately. I still believe the front three, the 3 midfielders who will be starting in the more attacking positions will be Martinelli, Odegaard, and Saka, with Kai Havertz perhaps again playing on the false 9 position. But actually, Kai Havertz is going to play in midfield. That's what I'm more convinced about. So there is an open spot for the striker slot. However, Nketiah is still there, so he could be an option. If you believe Trossard will start and perhaps Martinelli will play as a striker or Trossard will play as a false nine or something like that, he could be a great differential. But yeah, I just wouldn't go there at this moment in time, considering the plethora of options we have in the 6.5 and for example in the 7.5, 8.5 million bracket. Mudryk and Sterling are priced at well, it's an interesting price for them, but yeah, it's a wait and see from me for Chelsea assets, at least the midfielders in the first two games. It's Liverpool and West Ham, maybe from game week 3 onward. Again, incredible fixtures: Luton, Forest, and Bournemouth, Villa, Fulham, and Burnley. So yeah, insane run of fixtures for the Chelsea boys. However, uh, same argument I made with Trossard still stands here. There's a lot of great options this season in midfield, and I just don't feel the risk reward ratio is there with someone like Mudryk or Sterling or Trossard. Andreas Pereira is the last one in this bracket. It could also be someone like Almiron or Bowen or someone like that. The best of the rest. Let's call it that way. The problem this season is that FPL has made a huge mistake, in my opinion, in pricing, because they've priced all of the players from these top 4, top 5, top 6 teams at such cheap prices. I mean, if you can get Saka for 8.5 million, why would you go for someone like Bowen who's, I don't know, 7 or something like that? It just doesn't make any sense. Andreas Pereira, let's just talk about him for a bit. If Mitrovic does leave, yes, of course, Fulham is weaker from an offensive point of view, but him as an asset on penalties and set pieces and being he will then be the main man for Fulham, in my opinion. So when the fixtures get a bit easier, he could be a good option. But as far as I know, at 5.5, he is the only nailed attacking midfielder in the game. But yeah, Almiron, Bowen, I just wouldn't go for these players since there are better options at similar price points. And in the 4.5 to 5.0 million bracket, we have the likes of Garnacho and Chukwuemeka. Now they are very interesting options because Garnacho, in my opinion, will start the first few games. Højlund is out with an injury for, I don't know, a week or definitely more than a week, 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. So he could definitely miss the first 3 games. And if you need a 5.0 million midfielder, going for Garnacho is not as crazy as it sounded before, because Wolves at home, Spurs away, and Forest at home are 3 great fixtures. And for 5.0, you're risking nothing basically. So Garnacho could definitely be a good option to start, just as Carney Chukwuemeka could be. At 4.5 million, if he is a starter for this Chelsea team, in game weeks 3, 4, and 5, we've already talked about their great fixtures. So I'm not saying he will be a starter, but you just get him in for 4.5 million. What's the worst that can happen? His ownership is incredibly low, I think. So a price drop is probably not going to come before you wildcard. So these kinds of assets, the only reason I wouldn't go for them is that they are blocking your third United and third Chelsea spot. So if, for example, you want Rashford, Bruno, and Shaw, or if, for example, you aren't sure about getting Fernandes, but you have Shaw and Rashford. Well, if you get Garnacho, you're going to need a transfer or two, rather, to go from Garnacho from Garnacho to Bruno. So same argument to be made as with Chukwuemeka. So if you have 2 Chelsea midfielders, or 2 Chelsea players rather, and you want to go for a third one, that's better than Chukwuemeka, well, you're a bit blocked, and you need to make at least two transfers to go from Chukwuemeka to someone like Mudryk or Sterling. So yeah, from that point of view and team structure point of view, they are not the best picks, but that's the only reason why they aren't higher on the watch list, because Chukwuemeka is starting for a team as good as Chelsea at 4.5 million. That could be insane. Likewise with Garnacho at 5.0 million, if he is a starter for Manchester United, it's incredible value. So yeah, they are the two I would definitely consider in this price bracket. And moving on to the more boring picks, we have Anderson and Nakamba. Uh, Anderson, I don't think he will start, even though he's had an incredible preseason for Newcastle. He's a wait and see from me. But again, at 4.5 million, you can chuck him into your team and you're not risking much. And if you just want a boring pick for 4.5 million, go for Nakamba. He will come off the bench if needed for those 1 or 2 points. So yeah, that's it for the midfielders. And rounding off the watch list, of course, with the forwards, we have at number one Erling Haaland, probably a perma captain option for the season. Plays for the best team. He just won the treble. He scored more goals than games, I think, in the Premier League. Absolutely incredible option. And yeah, even in perhaps the second game week against Newcastle, you can captain him. Who's to say he can't score a hat trick against the defense as good as Newcastle, because he's just that good, and City really do revolve around him. And yeah, not much needs to be said about Haaland. Kane, of course, it depends on his transfer to Bayern. If he goes to Bayern, obviously he's not an option anymore. But if he stays at Spurs, I think we will see another great season from Harry Kane. He will score a bucket load of goals, and he has some great fixtures from Gaming 3 onwards. And yeah, definitely an option to consider. Maybe not start with him until the situation with Bayern is resolved, but could be a great option. In the 7.0 to 8.0 million bracket, I actually have Jackson at number one, because at 7.0 he is quite cheap, and with Nkunku out, he is their only forward basically. So I expect him to start every game. Penalties, he might be on them, he might not be, but from Game Week 3 onwards, we've already spoken about the great fixtures that Chelsea has. So yeah, I think he is definitely a good option. The other option in this price bracket is Ollie Watkins, and he is a bit safer than Jackson. He is going to play every game 90 minutes on penalties, plays for a good team. Maybe not as high of a ceiling as Jackson has, but he will tick along nicely with an assist here, a goal there. So yeah, Watkins is definitely a great option if you want to be safe. Jackson if you want to be a bit more risky and really target those fixtures against Luton and Forest and Bournemouth. Next up we have Isak and Wilson. At 7.5 million, Isak is also a tempting option, but the first four fixtures, or rather first five fixtures, are just not appealing. So I would avoid both of them. If I had to choose one, I would probably go for Isak, just because he will play more minutes than Wilson. However, if Isak gets injured and Wilson is a nailed starter, he is definitely a great option. We know how good he is. He's just an incredible finisher, and of course on penalties, while both of them are on the pitch, he's the primary penalty taker. Moving on to Gakpo and Darwin at 7.5 million, I don't like them. Darwin, I don't think will start. Gakpo, I think will start, but I think Luis Diaz is the one you want to go for if you want to go for a second Liverpool attacker. Of course, if you want to go for just one, you go for Mo Salah. That's obvious. But yeah, the fears of rotation are there for all of them. Klopp now has so many attacking options that it's going to be a nightmare. I really hope they don't turn into another Man City with all the rotation there. So yeah, I would avoid the Liverpool forwards. Mitrovic, unfortunately, rumors of him going to Saudi Arabia. If it goes through, he's obviously dead as an FPL option. But if he stays at Fulham at 7.5 million, he's already shown last season what he can do. So he could be a great option once again. However, I don't think he will stay, and therefore he is in the red zone for my watch list. From 5.5 to 6.5 million, we have at top spot João Pedro, simply because I think his versatility is going to be really important and he is going to get a lot of minutes. Also, I believe he is on penalties, and that's obviously a big bonus for a player that's 5.5 million, playing for one of the best attacking teams in the league, especially with the first game against Luton. If you want a cheap attacker, definitely go for João Pedro. Next up, we have Johan Visa, also a cheap attacker who is going to start. He's a good option. Unfortunately, doesn't have penalties. The fixture run is great for the first 4 game weeks. However, I have my doubts about him. I would just rather go for Brian Mbomo if you want a Brentford attacker. Uh, yeah, a decent option, definitely, but I don't think he's going to play 90 minutes often. So yeah, that lessens his appeal. Alvarez from City is definitely an intriguing option as well. I'm not convinced that he will be a starter this season. I think he will definitely get some minutes. That's the thing with these players, and especially as I said, with games lasting more than 90 minutes, as we saw in the World Cup, there's going to be a lot of extra time. So even if these players come off the bench, they can still do some damage, especially if they play for Man City. So Alvarez, if you want to take a punt, be a bit maverick and be a bit risky, there are worse options than him. However, for the start of the season, I wouldn't go there. If we get some early team news, of course, you can definitely play Alvarez. Solanke is also 6.5 million, and contrast to Alvarez, he doesn't have the high ceiling that Alvarez has, but he is going to play 90 plus minutes every game. He's going to be absolutely nailed, and on penalties, if you believe Bournemouth is going to have a good season, do go for him. However, the fixtures are awful, so I wouldn't go there. Welbeck and Ferguson, out of the two, I think unfortunately Welbeck is going to start. However, Ferguson I really like as a player. Just incredible composure and finishing at such a young age. His movement is also great. So if we see that he is a starting striker at that price point, he is an incredible option. However, I prefer Pedro simply because of his versatility, and yeah, I think he will see more playing time than Welbeck and Ferguson, who I believe will rotate. Nketiah is an interesting punt as well at 5.5 million. If you think he is going to start, yes, I know Havertz started against Manchester City, but that's a different type of game, and it's understandable to not play a player like Nketiah, who's a real fox in the box, but doesn't offer as much as Havertz does in the build-up in possession. So I wouldn't worry about that, but uh, yeah, there's definitely words that Havertz can play there, and that Trossard can also come in, and one of Trossard or Martinelli can fill in the striker spot. So definitely very risky, tempting price at 5.5 million. Yeah, you can go for him. It can pay off incredibly well since the first game is Nottingham Forest. He can definitely score a hat trick there or something if he starts. However, the risk is just too great to consider for me. Then we have Antonio, Edward, Mateta, Jimenez, Vinicius, Morris Adebayo, Awani, Amdouni, and Foster. Not really options you should consider. If you want a cheap striker, go for Joao Pedro. If you want to spend more, go for Watkins, Jackson, Kane. Yeah, these players don't fill me with confidence. Morris Adebayo, Amdouni, and Foster have a blank game week as well. In game week 2, the fixtures are rough. Antonio, yeah, also not appealing. Edward Mateta playing for a defensive team in Crystal Palace, and of course they will be rotated, I believe, as well. So none of these options really appeal to me. And in the 4.5 million bracket, we actually have a player that I think I'm going to have in my lineup. It's Osula. So if McBurney really is out, injured, I believe for the first game week, Osula can get a start, and his ownership is actually incredibly low. Unlike Archer and Mubama, who are very highly owned, with good reason, of course. Mubama had a great preseason, and Archer is basically, or should be at least, second choice forward behind Watkins. So if Watkins gets injured, Archer is a real bargain at 4.5 million. And Mubama, if he gets a few minutes, a few starts, he can also be a good option. But Osula is the one I'm really interested about because of his ownership. His ownership is so low that a price drop isn't really likely. And therefore, at 4.5 million, a player who can start the first game if McBurney really is out. He's had a decent preseason, played a lot of minutes, has some great fixtures in the first four. So, yeah, I think this is the option I will go for the third striker spot. Of course, I'm not going to play him, but you don't need to play a 4.5 million asset anyway. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the watch list. Thanks for watching, guys, if you made it this far, and hope you have a good game week 1. Bye.